So I will talk about, very briefly, about organizational and team capacities, strengths, and partnerships. This is a section that you will have in most proposals that you have to put in. And I think the key thing to keep in mind when the funder is reading this, what they want to see is not necessarily the science you will be doing, but whether you have the capacity where you work to achieve whatever you have proposed. So, and I'm probably going to divide that in four sections. First, the organizational or institutional strength, or the things you might want to mention about your institute. The one key thing that funders look at is whether your institute is capable of delivering what you're saying. So, for example, one of the proposals, the one you were writing, on HIV, on some, or maybe let's go to the Cape Verde. When Fred was asking you, do you have this cytometer or these particular machines? And you said there's an institution that has that. So if in your proposal you're writing and then you're saying institutional capacity, and the funder doesn't see anywhere where you mention that this type of equipment exists, then they might wonder whether you will ever be able to achieve. So your science was good, your idea is very good, but they might not fund you because they don't think you'll deliver. Because you don't have the equipment, you don't have the machines, you're working in a remote area, you need electricity 24/7, and you don't have it, they might not give you the money. That's in terms of infrastructure, but there is something else. Does your organization handle grants? So if you're applying for $1 million, a grant for $1 million, the person giving you the money is taking a risk in giving you that much money. What they want to see is whether you have infrastructure or capacity in your organization to handle that much money. So if your institute has never had any money close to that, so if it's a small institute that has, say, 10 projects, for example, in total, and you're working around $10,000 a project for the past 5 years, and then now you're asking for $1 million, and that grant doesn't include expanding the organization, so it's just science, I will doubt that you will be able to do this because it's too much money. It needs handling, it needs someone who sits in an office just looking after how money flows, apart from you doing the science. So, and you will not be the administrator, you will not be the person doing paying or buying cars and doing other things. So it has to be convincing that the proportion, there has to be a proportion of the money you're asking and the capacity of your institute to absorb that much money. And that also sort of goes with your personnel and whatever you have. Of course, you're not going to write, in this section, we have 200 employees and we have an administrator, we have this. But some grants do ask that specifically to show for example, the flow chart of your organization for them to understand that you can handle that much money. So that's for the institute. Together with that, they might be looking at the capacity, not in terms of handling money or in terms of cars and all the hardcore things that you need to use, but the expertise in that area of research where you're proposing to work. So if your institute normally works on mosquito ecology, where you go sampling and you use traps and you go into the communities and things like that. And your grant is about genetically modified mosquitoes, then the funder will have to ask the question whether you really can handle that, because most of your scientists are not working in this area and this is not your place. It might be that you have the capacity because you're joining, you're doing partnerships with others, which we will talk about later, but you have to convince them that you can do it in terms of expertise in that particular field where you want to work. The same point applies when they are checking your past success, how you've been doing. So if I see a grant that comes to me for funding and I see that the past 10 years you've been successful in getting grants in this same field, I would feel more comfortable to give you more money to do the same or to do something similar. If it's your very first grant, then you have to convince me that you either have the capacity or you have a partner who will help you achieve. So in this section, this is where you want to shine and show that your institute is capable, has done this before or something similar before, and is capable of delivering. In terms of strengths as well, there are key or special things that might be happening in your institute that you don't want to miss. For example, Ifakara Health Institute is perhaps one of, if not the only, institute doing mosquito research ecology that has a vast infrastructure of semi-field systems where you can do research, a lot of research. They call it Mosquito City. This is a pearl that you want to flash. If you're going to work in mosquito ecology and you work in Ifakara, you want to mention this. This is an asset that you have that is not existing in other places. It might influence the funders to, if you're competing with 10 other institutes, it's very likely that they will give you the money because you know, well, you have the infrastructures to do it. But this applies when this is really key, something special, something that you want to mention. That gives a name to your institute. So you want to mention those. Something related to that is with time, we get to know some institutes because of a particular area of research where they work. For example, we know, well, in my area of work, malaria, we know that Swiss TPH in Switzerland is very good in modeling. There's a group that is well-known specialists in modeling. If you belong to that group, it's very likely that if you have a grant that talks about modeling, a funder would feel more comfortable giving you money. So if you're not of that group, but you can partner with them, it sort of pushes you up to be funded if your project is going to work a lot or depends a lot on modeling. So, which leads me to the next point, which is partnerships. If you don't have all those things that I've said, it doesn't mean you cannot proceed. But you have to show that you have a partnership already in place, or you plan to have it, with people who have the expertise you don't have, or people who have the infrastructure you don't have. I don't know all the details about what funders do, but if you anticipate their worries or their fears or their apprehension about giving you money, you'll be in a better place. Because if you're asking me $1 million, I really want to know this money is going to be well used by the right people in the right place at the right time. You think about those and you put it in that particular place where it asks about partnerships, institutions that will be involved in this. In one particular point, I forgot to mention about strengths. If you knew, because most of us here will be young and perhaps starting a career in research, and you don't have the clout or the baggage behind you to impose yourself as someone who has to be funded, but maybe George Collis is your supervisor and he's had 100 grants funded. You have to be able to mention that somehow. You're in good place. Your supervisor has done this. You're working in the lab, in this particular lab. That will ring a bell with the funder. We know this lab. They've been doing fantastic work. And this is a student or a collaborator or one of the scientists that will work in this particular lab or with this particular professor. So you shouldn't be scared that, okay, this is my first time and I don't have this. This is why you need to partner with someone else. So now I'll use just an example of Wellcome Trust. What they suggest that you think about in terms of preparing and planning, doing your research and sharing and learning. These are just good practice things that you have to think about when you're preparing your, when you want to partner with someone you will work with. So you've looked at what you do and you know that you have to have a partner in your application. You have to select the best partner who should be involved. At what level do you want to involve them? Because at the same time, you have to balance that it's not the partner who will do your work. You still are responsible of achieving whatever you're writing in your proposal, but you have to show, just answering to your question, that you have very good science, you have a good plan, but you're not a statistician. You don't know how to analyze this data when it comes out. No one expects you to know everything about what you're doing. So it's always best to say that we will use, if you're writing the method section or how you will do the research, you have to reach out to someone who knows something about data analysis, if it's a serious proposal. You cannot just write, we will analyze the data. Someone will want to know how you will do this. There's a right way and a wrong way. Well, perhaps many right ways of doing it, but there is also a wrong way. They want to be convinced that you have a partner who is either a statistician or a modeler, epidemiologist, or whatever that you need, that will help you in parts that you cannot do. So agreeing on objectives and, okay. When you receive a grant, this time I'm talking from a funder perspective. If I receive a grant that says, if Akara Health Institute is going to work on this and this, and because we don't have this particular asset, we will have it done by ICIPE or another institute. I need to see that there is a partnership between IHI and ICIPE, or at least a memorandum of understanding or some level of collaboration that exists, because I'm not going to be the one managing your subcontracts when you start working. But I want to be sure that if I give you money, in the process of your work, you don't come back to me and say, well, the project failed because we didn't have, finally ICIPE didn't want to do, or ICIPE didn't want to do this. So I want to be sure that your partnerships are solid and in some way legally binding, because I'm giving you a lot of money. I want to be sure that it's going to work. And now it's gone. I don't know. Okay, can read. Analysis and interpretation. This is usually in the academia. There's these issues about authorships and who's done what. And to be honest, I personally, on the funding level, I haven't seen a grant that we would say, well, this doesn't work because we don't know who is the author, the first author and everything like that. But it's up to you to think about these things before. There is always frustrations about who did what, and because academia, and unfortunately we depend on usually what we publish and how much we've published, and you have to sell yourself. You have to be able to at least write some few first authors, and when you're becoming bigger or you grow, I don't want to say smarter, maybe you have a lot of experience, then you become a last author or a senior author. These things have to be thought about and discussed in your collaborations. It's not going to go. I don't think it's going to go at the level of the funding, because those things come later into the research. But at the same time, you don't want to be linked as a funder to a case that is going around where authors didn't agree because, or it gets into a journal and it's retrieved because people didn't agree on what they do or not do. I don't think this is the part where you discuss, or we want to discuss ethics and how you do the ethical approvals and everything else. I think that's another section that comes later. So I think I'll stop here and take questions if there are any. But key thing, always think about the funder. They are taking a risk in giving you money. You have to make them feel there's not too much risk, there's no high risk, your money will be used properly, we know how to handle money, we have the expertise to do the work. For the things we don't have, we have collaborators who are good for this.
Okay, so just before questions, just something minor to add. Thanks, Silas. So of course, with the partners, you'll be definitely collaborating with team members from those institutions. So you just have to make sure that you also, put their CVs, you share their experience and things like that. But if you have, let's say, you're working with the film industry, it'd be nice to get their letter of support that, yes, I'm going to work with you. So getting all those letters of support from the government organs or from institution to go with your proposal is, it's always a good thing. So just want to point that out as a reminder. Any questions to Silas?
How people should deal with partnerships where one institution is an expert in one thing and another institution is an expert in a different thing, and they are coming together to complement each other to achieve a goal that the funding partner has requested. So I think you talked about it briefly, but I'm wondering if you could just explain that further for people to understand. And the second thing I am requesting you to explain for the group further is there are situations where the funding partner specifies that you must have a certain type of partnership. For example, the partner might say, for us to give you money, you must demonstrate partnership between two African institutions, or you must demonstrate partnership between the so-called North and the so-called South. And then you have to start struggling to find these partnerships, asking people to partner with you and so on. So how do you go about that process? So two things I'm asking you to clarify. One is the issue of complementarity, and second, how do people approach situations where the funding partner has specified that this partnership is a condition and maybe you don't have it yet?
Okay, for the complementarity and partnerships, there are cases like that where you're working on a particular, in this case it tends to be when you have a big thing you want to resolve and it requires some particular partnership expertise that you don't have in the same institute, or where it's best to do them in two different institutes because your case will be stronger afterwards. Say if you have to run two randomized control trials in 2 different ecological situations to prove your point, when this is the only way you have to do it, then partnership works for you, and you have to build that. Now, that tends to also come with conflicts, because institutes compete, unfortunately, instead of always working together. But in my small, not that big experience, it usually works when you know the person you want to work with, rather than just the institute. Because it's a difficult relationship to build, particularly because the institutes tend to ask money from the same partners, same funders. And unless you have built this relationship early enough to mutually support each other and apply for the same funding, it's a tough call that involves some level of trusting the other scientists you want to work with. Or you have to be so good in what you're doing that the other partner knows that they need you anyway for this money to work, for you to get this grant. In which case it's easier to handle because you all are working towards the same goal, and you trust each other on the level of science, and you want to do it together. Usually when Fred asks you a question like this, he has something he wants you to say, but I'm not sure I'm saying what he wants me to say. So if I'm not doing that, I want you to do it later. Yeah, so the other thing is he asked us about when the funder actually does specify that you have to have a collaboration with either South-South or North-South. Usually these grants, when it's specifically said that it's for some political reasons that are not always mentioned. For example, the North-South, usually in the UK, is because the granting system is linked to external aid or what the West says is aid they are giving you. So they want you to partner with an institute in the UK, because at the same time they have to demonstrate to the taxpayers that they are creating jobs within the UK. So they're giving the money, yes, they want to help Africa, but they want to create jobs as well in the place, and it's their money, so there's nothing to complain about unless you can generate your own money. So they want to do that, and you will have to do that. And it does work. There are some frictions, but usually it's in your benefit or in your interest to build that relationship. But as young scientists and people who will probably grow in this career, you have to know your rights. And you have to define what your institute gets, and it has to be clear from the beginning. This is not for the funder who is funding you, but for you, because I've seen cases where the South is exploited because they're not powerful in having that money. But you have to remember that the institute in the West that is asking you to collaborate needs you. They're not just doing it because they love you. They want to work with you. There is a reason they want to work with you. You have to be clear about what you need out of the collaboration, and be open about what you need from the collaboration. You can refuse money. It doesn't happen a lot, but you can refuse money when it doesn't respond to the overall need of your institute or institution in Africa. This is usually for people like Fred and Zawadi and other people who are working in the grant management and things like that. You have to protect your institute. It's always good to have a partner. It doesn't matter if they are in the West or in the South. It's always good to have a partner, but you have to define what you want in the partnership. It shouldn't be one way, because that's where the money comes from. For the South-South, personally, I think it's a good thing to develop, particularly these days. because if the money is coming from the West, I don't want to be too political, but if the money is coming from the West and it's only a West-South collaboration that is just one line, it's not good for your future because you work here in Africa, and it's best to have your neighbor and develop your neighbor and try to grow as a group. What you see here is really nice. Countries in Africa, we've adopted George as well as a Tanzanian. So we're helping each other. Fred, Sam, and others are African, and they are helping you. It's a South-South collaboration, and it's good. And you're shining. You have a lot of energy and everything else. Make it work. I would say, actually, I would favor way more the grants that are South-South. But some institutions are not as strong to do that, and you need to develop in that area. It's not probably for you, but your institutes need to be strong enough to absorb grants, to support the scientists so that that collaboration works.
Thank you very much, Silas. I have two questions. This aspect, institutional capacity, is it part of procedure or is on its own? One question. On methods, procedure for... Yes. What aspects?
Yeah, if you have two questions, just ask me one and then I'll answer because my brain doesn't function well with two questions. Some proposals do show you exactly where to write, where they say partnerships or people will be involved just for you to write. So it depends on the format of your proposal. If it's not there and you think it will strengthen your case, I would certainly put it where in the methods. It's not the method of your work.
Procedure.
I would certainly write a separate paragraph on convincing the funder why I can do this work. Particularly if I'm working on something very specialized that need to show that although I can't do it myself or I don't have that institute to do it for me, I have a partner who can do that. Even if the grant, so I haven't seen all the grant proposals and what they ask. If it's not there but you think it would work for you, you should put it in there.